In this lesson, we'll take a look at some of the options for displaying the models in 3ds Max. So this is lesson 4 start, and it's just kind of an interior living room, and we'll use this as our example to look at how we can view our model. So here we have sort of the shaded polygons, and they also have the edges on the outside, just as we had on our chair that we imported. Those are going to be called edged faces, and you can get an indication of how you're viewing your models right here at the top of our viewport. You can see that we're seeing it as smooth, highlights, and edged faces. So by clicking on this, you can decide how you want to actually view your models. If you want to turn off your edged faces, you can simply hit that checkbox, and there we just have our smooth plus highlights, which is what you would typically think of when looking at a 3D model. Okay. We can also toggle edged faces by hitting F4 on our keyboard, and that'll just toggle that off and on. Okay. We can also look at our models as wireframes, and that's going to be just looking at the edges without any of the polygon geometry. So this can be very useful if you're working on a model and you need to get in there and start to modify some points that are behind other points, but you can see how this can get very confusing if you are not sure what you're looking at, or if you're looking at a very complex model. It can be very difficult to see the where each of the individual points are. Okay. Now we can all go back to smooth plus highlights. Okay. If we hit F3 on our keyboard, we can go to wireframe, toggle that. Okay. So we have options for viewing it here. So we've got smooth plus highlights, we've got hidden line, which is kind of like a wireframe without any of the wireframe behind what you can actually see. Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense. You're able to see the contours of your models and how those edges are flowing. So that can be useful. Flat is going to be without any of the shading at all. So in this case, you can see we don't really see much of anything. That can help on looking at silhouettes and things like that. Okay, and then we have down here under other visual styles, we have different options for facets and highlights, lit wireframes, bounding boxes. So you can move around really fast here, but you can see all of our models are just defined by bounding boxes, so we can see where they are. It's sort of a rough indication of what they look like, but we don't really see any of the modeling there, so that can be useful as well. We'll go back to smooth highlights. Okay, now we can hide and show different models. So if we turn on edged faces here, and I'll select the couch, let's say we want to hide this. So I'm going to right click to go to a quad menu, and up here you'll find some options for actually hiding and unhiding. So if I hide selection, you can see that turns off the visibility for that particular object. And if I want to get it back, I can go ahead and either unhide all or unhide by name. If I unhide all, it makes sense that everything that I've hidden will be unhidden. If I unhide by name, I can actually bring up a list of things that are hidden. Okay, and I'll choose the couch and unhide the couch, and there it is. Okay, so there'll be many times when you'll be working with a complex scene and you only want to work on a specific object, and maybe there's a lot of objects in the way of that object. So for instance, if I just want to work on this rug and I don't want to get anything else involved here, I can actually isolate that. So here in our quad menu, right up at the top, and I don't know if you can see this, kind of look at it right up here, isolate selection. Okay, so if I enter that mode, you can see I get a little window that gives me a button for exiting that, but as I'm working, I'm actually just working on that rug. Everything else is gone. So I'll do a little bit of work on here, and then when I'm done, I can exit isolation mode. Okay, you can also hit Alt-Q to enter isolation mode. That's going to be the hotkey for that. And so that's really useful for getting in and working on a specific object and not having to worry about anything else. There are also a number of things that we can do over here in the display panel. So we've got our create and modify that we looked at. Over here, a little monitor is display. Here we can hide different types of objects. We can hide the shapes. If we have lights, we can hide those. We can hide geometry. You can see there we've got our geometry hidden. Okay, so this will also allow us to do the hiding and unhiding that we have here, and also choose different display properties. Okay, so if we want to just display this rug as its bounding box, we can set that specifically So if there's an object that is really complex, but we don't really need to see it at that point, we can turn on the box display. Okay, so there's a number of options here. Can make that see-through so that we can be able to model to that. So this is the display panel, and there's going to be a lot of controls in here for how you want to actually display. You can also choose what the wireframe color is going to be, and also the shaded color if you don't have a material assigned to it, or if you do have a material assigned to it, how that's actually viewed in your object color. So those are some of the options for displaying. Now there's another way of organizing and displaying our models, and that's going to be using layers. Now looking up here, we don't really have layers up here, so I'm going to right click, and this will tell us what we have active. So we have the command panel on, we have the main toolbar on, but I actually want to have layers as well. So I'll go ahead and click that, and you can see we get a floating window here which has our layers, and we can keep it up here or we can drop it up into the interface. And so here we have the ability to manage our layers. Here are the actual layers that we're using, and you can see I've already got some organized. And then the buttons going from left to right have give us the ability to create a new layer, add a selection to the current layer, select objects in the current layer, and then set current layer to selections layer. So right now we're on the plants layer. So we'll go to the default layer, and then we can modify any of these. So looking at these plants, if I want to turn off the visibility of those plants, I don't want to have to see those, I can go ahead and just check this little box here. We've got this little bulb, and you can actually see that the plants go away. Okay, let's say we want to see the plants, but I don't want to be able to select them. I can actually just freeze those. So now I can select everything around the plants, but I can't select the plants because everything on that layer is frozen. You can also freeze individual objects as well. Okay, and so we can modify those. Okay, you can see that we've got the ceiling layer, which we can turn on and off. Okay, we've got a layer for the parametric objects that are used to create the walls, and so you can really start to organize everything in your scene into layers to really help you define what you want to work on at one time, and just keep everything organized rather than hiding and showing individual objects. Maybe you just want to drop that onto a layer and then go ahead and use the visibility on those. Okay, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. Okay, so we looked at, in this lesson at how to change the display and look at the display options that we have for our models here. Also looked at hiding models and unhiding them based on the quad menu. Just a right click, and then also under display you can change that as well, and then also organizing things onto layers and viewing and changing the visibility that way. So a number of different options for actually changing the display of our 3D models here in 3ds Max. Also isolation mode, which is going to be very useful for you. So now that we've looked at displaying our models, let's in the next lesson take a look at actually moving our models around. So transforming those models in 3D space, moving, scaling and rotating those, and then looking at pivots as well. So we'll take a look at that in the next lesson.